Report. Go back. You go back one more. Within the stormwater group, there's a new concept that's being implemented in a lot of places now called productive landscapes. And that's something that you deal with all of the open space in your community. And the catchment of that water, it becomes both an ecological resource for the use of creating habitat as well as amenity for the public. And that's something that's being implemented in a lot of major cities now. In Hong Kong, there's a plan towards the implementation. In Singapore, we're going through this process right now. The other area is transportation. I mentioned sustainable transportation planning is key. And this isn't just dealing with congestion or the amount of people that are coming in, but it's actually dealing with how your guests, how your visitors are coming here. And looking at strategies that revolve around, we call it the 5 Ds of transportation design, which deals with density, diversity, the design of the system, destinations, and then distance to travel. And especially in resort communities where the majority of your people are flying in, from where they fly in and how you actually bring them through the community can be carefully orchestrated to be done in a way that's using alternative technology. It might be natural gas type of systems, it might be electric cars, it might be a whole host of different things, but it helps to reduce the amount of carbon loading that transportation puts out into our community. And transportation, from a sustainability point of view, is the number one issue with carbon loading in a community. So things that, and this becomes a backbone to Hoi An, it becomes a backbone to the places that you're designing. And it really needs to be done in an orchestrated way so that you come up with a well-regulated transportation network. We can then look at energy, and the energy in which and the energy that's available here. I mean, currently there's a lot of coal-fired power that's generated within this area. But this area is actually ripe for wind technology. And you can see that there's on the map there, that's actually a wind resource map, which starts to identify the potential of wind as an energy source along the coast here. And this is something that is being studied actually by a lot of private, smaller scale developers who are developing projects in this area in terms of being able to take their projects off of the grid. This is something that could be expanded throughout the city, so you're looking at alternative energy sources, which then reduces the overall carbon emissions coming from other facilities such as coal-based or natural gas. We also need to look at the green materials of construction, means and methods, and this deals with everything that we put into building, from the roads to the sewers to the bricks and mortars that build the hotels that the guests are going to stay in. And there's some key things with this in terms of sustainability. It's really that deals with reducing the amount of material that we're using and the waste that's created, which starts to minimize energy use, and it helps to deal with air pollution and waste pollution. A component of this is recycling, and within that I would say using old buildings is a component of that, but there's a lot of other recycling that can be done within the industry in terms of building product. And what this leads us to is creating this integrated platform, and where I started off with all of the right people that you need to build into the team to create a master plan to move forward with in the community. Is really optimizing that around the sustainability plan. And that deals with the fundamental elements of building energy, renewable energy, the public realm energy, water, eco-services, mobility. And all of that frames this integrated planning framework, of which then you can move forward with the dialogue about how best to plan the community. And what we've done, and what I want to introduce to you today, is a tool that we use to help to measure this. And this is something that is really important to do now, is to set up the goals of where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. And do it so it's measurable, so that you can measure it now and you can measure how well you've done in the future. With this model, we call this the Sustainable Systems Integrated Model, which is SIM. And the SIM model was developed as a response to a growing notion about people wanting to measure how sustainable they are. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of jargon. In the newspapers, eco-city this, sustainability this, but is it really green? Is it really truly measurable? And so this is a tool that we came up with in terms of creating this whole systems approach, so that you can validate projects, you can quantify it, and you can measure it. And you can do this at various levels of scale. You can do this at the city scale, at the Hoan scale. You can do it at the district level, so within it you can create different districts, different areas. You can also do it at a building level scale. And at a building scale, there's actually a lot of programs now on the market in terms of how you identify and measure how well you do with a green hotel or a green building. So what we wanted to do was to be able to combine all of those scales into the SIM model. And then the SIM model starts to look at different stages. It looks at the existing master plans, which is the first step. It does an analysis of that existing master plan and then compares it to alternatives. There's then a preferred plan that comes out of that, which then starts to look at alternative systems, whether you have a certain building envelope that's all glass, or if it's all bricks. And then from that, we develop an optimized program for sustainability, which you can use then in order to determine the total carbon loading in a community. And then you can make intelligent decisions about additional costs that you may have to incur, or changes that you could make that have a big impact on reduction of carbon. What I want to do is just take you through a few examples of how this is done, using an example in China in terms of a similar setting where it's an urban framework on a main river with a lake, and a series of different building typologies. And again, this is really a tool in order to help to measure the decisions that you're making. So in the beginning, we have 3 different programs for the site. Each yields a different type of urban form. And if you think of Hoi An, this is all the stuff that you want to add into Hoi An. This might be additional buildings, this might be additional investment opportunities, different type of land uses. So then you start to model that. You start to model the different uses. And what we do is then create this matrix, which starts to look at the urban form. It looks at the resource performance. It identifies all the ecological elements. And then it also, very importantly, identifies all the social cultural components, which includes all of the historical preservation elements. That then is identified in the sustainability balance matrix, where we come up with the overall score. So this is done on an existing framework. Then we look at the alternatives. So you can see in the bottom left there, we start to look at the cars, the amount of driving that's done in the community, the amount of gas that's consumed, the amount of carbon sequestration, if that's a goal that we might be looking at for the community. And we can start to measure that in terms of the amount of carbon emissions that are created by the choices we're making in the planning exercise.